question that I think everyone probably ought to ask themselves more often, and also ask others, is like, how do you feel? How do you feel in yourself?
You obviously, even at uni and at school, you've been very involved and driven in your own words. Why?
That's the eternal question. And that's really hard to answer. It's definitely, for me, all about just embracing all parts of yourself and following what brings you joy and what you're passionate about, and not letting other people's expectations or responses define what you choose to do. And I definitely think that going into those things with no expectations is what has so far yielded the best results. I really am interested in just communicating with people, and how do you kind of spread messages of positivity and also have a positive impact.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my podcast, Coffee's on Me, David Quan, where I strive to give guests legacy-worthy interviews that listeners can enjoy while cooking, commuting, relaxing, or walking their pets. As always, I thank the guests so far for courageously sharing their stories. If you have been enjoying the discussions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, please do consider leaving a review and nominating a guest by contacting me. Today's episode is a bit different because my guest is currently in Annecy, France, while I'm in London. Good things take time, so our coffee together will happen in the near future, hopefully. But our guest today is Sophie Clare. Sophie Clare is a third-year French and German student at Christ College, Cambridge, currently undertaking a year abroad and always embracing adventure. Raised with values which encourage working hard and playing hard, Cambridge has provided Sophie with the opportunity to explore hobbies, passions, and pathways, both old and new, from medieval studies to motorsports. Sophie loves to talk about languages, pop culture, empowerment, travel, fast cars, history, manuscripts, and food, among other things. Sophie, welcome to my podcast, Coffees on Me, David Kwan.
Thank you, David. I'm really excited.
I am as well. So I believe that I first met you, Sophie, on my union campaign. Obviously, I had to message quite a few people on that campaigning journey, and you really made an impression because of your thoughtful responses. You had read my manifesto, you talked about going out to vote with some of your friends, and just showed a level of interest that isn't always, it wasn't always what I'd got. And I was just wondering, why were you interested in my union campaign at the time?
I mean, firstly, thank you. That's really, really kind of you to have noticed. And yeah, I mean, I've joined the union at the start of my time at Cambridge, and I have to admit that I hadn't got super involved in it. I think it was something I went to a couple of events. Obviously, with COVID, it was additionally difficult because a lot of the events weren't happening in person. But I was really struck by your campaign just being very open, and kind of manifesto having such kind of clear and wide-ranging goals, but also that seemed achievable and had a basis in your experience. And it was the first time really that I'd had people from the union actually reach out to me during an election. I know that there's a lot of stereotypes and sometimes controversy about all of that and the campaigning process. I was honestly so like impressed and positively kind of surprised, I guess, with how you handled that. And so yeah, it was really cool. It was a nice way to like meet you and hear about what you were doing, and then also realize that we had a load of mutual friends.
Well, thank you very much. I obviously didn't win, but one of the benefits from that was that I got to meet you. And I know that we've had a few encounters after that on Instagram. And also, I think I saw you in the UL during exam season when we were very stressed.
Yeah, I remember that day. It was, I think, perhaps great evidence of one of the things I love most about Cambridge, which is just that you will bump into people you know all the time.
Yeah.
Because on that same day, I think I saw, like half a dozen friends that I had not intended to see, that I did not know would be there, and were just all at the UL. a
Yeah.
big exam season vibe, but it was, yeah, really nice.
That's wonderful. Well, I guess the reason why I wanted to start there it is twofold. Number one, I know you've listened to many episodes of the podcast, so I had to think of something unique for you. But number two, it really seems like from your diverse range of experiences at Cambridge that you're very open to be outside of your comfort zone. And I was wondering if you could give maybe a brief overview of some of the activities you've got up to at Cambridge.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, okay. I've always been somebody that loves doing extracurricular activities, clubs, societies, all the way from school through to uni. I really was that person that was doing something every lunchtime, most after schools, getting involved. So I think that definitely set me up to having the same approach once I got to Cambridge. Uh, so things I've been involved in have ranged from on the academic or kind of extracurricular academic side, doing the Cambridge Medieval Seminar, going to events, talks, dinners with other medievalists, the Cambridge Undergraduate Conference in German Studies, of which I've been a committee member for the last 2 years, which is a student-led undergraduate research conference. It's very cool, and I've experienced it for the first year in a Zoom COVID-friendly format, and in second year it was in person. Aside from those, I also helped to found the Cambridge Uni Motorsport Fans Society. It started off as a WhatsApp group among the many different group chats for incoming freshers during 2020 in the COVID days, and it was designed for F1 fans to just meet and get to know each other, have a conversation over the race weekends. And then a small group of us from that decided that it would be really fun to make that into a society. So that's something I've been really quite heavily involved in.
Mm.
One of the co-founders. I was the president last year, and it's just such a fun thing to be involved in. So I guess those are probably the main highlights. I was on the Christ JCR for a bit too, which was super fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to kind of get involved in as many different things that pique my interest as possible.
That's awesome, and you've clearly been involved in quite a lot and making the most out of your time. I know one of your things is always trying to say yes, although you've been trying to say no a bit more to find a better. But I correct me if I'm wrong. One of your fashion heroes is Janelle Monet. Am I saying it that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually wrote a varsity article about them, which
So
was
so
really fun.
one of her quotes is embrace what makes you unique, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And do you resonate with that quote at all, given the diverse sense of interest you have?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Janelle Monáe is one of my absolute icons and has been for a long time, ever since my dad put her album, The Arcandroid, onto my iPod in, 2011? Little baby Sophie was obsessed. And yeah, their music, their activism really resonates with me. And quotes like that, it's definitely, for me, all about just embracing all parts of yourself and following what brings you joy and what you're passionate about, and not letting other people's expectations or responses define what you choose to do.
So do you have a concrete example of something that you feel is quite niche or unique that is to you?
Ooh. Well, I guess in a way, a lot of my interests are very, on the surface, disparate, and they don't necessarily seem like they could fit together in one person. Um, you know, the love of motorsports alongside loving fashion and music and dance, or working in a library, but also doing all these things to do with, yeah, like fast cars. I don't know. It's, I guess, mostly in terms of just being myself. I remember at school as well, I was always the same. Like, sometimes you'd get a bit of stick for what you were getting involved in, like kids are going to be kids, right? And I just knew that I would wanted to do what I enjoyed, and so stuck with that. And whether that was the ballroom and Latin dancing when I was younger, or getting involved in working in the library from the age of 15, that sort of thing, just kind of following what I enjoyed, and trying to continue that at uni and beyond.
Mm. You took ballroom and Latin dancing quite seriously, I believe from age 5 to 10. And I was wondering, at that age, did you fully appreciate the level of discipline, commitment, or structure that was required to excel?
I definitely did not. I loved it, but I think because I loved it, it didn't feel like work or discipline. It was just something that I enjoyed doing, and I'm glad that it was, because a lot of people that do get involved in like competitive level sports like that can find it a really kind of pressurized environment. Um, I I absolutely loved that time, and it was really such an amazing experience to get to go to different competitions. There were a few years when I was focusing more on medals, which is the kind of technical qualifications side of the dancing. Um, and yeah, it was such a wonderful experience and something that I still enjoy doing. I continued doing it uh, very regularly up until I was about 17.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, after that point, I then ended up not taking lessons anymore. So it was more of a irregular passion. But at uni, I've got a few friends that are involved in dance sport, so I still get to kind of live vicariously through them in that way. And I've gone to a couple of dance classes with some of them, so that's been really nice to kind of tap into it occasionally. But
That that's Yeah, I'm just a bit curious about how that structured work. Like for me, like, say I did music, like for piano, trombone, euphonium, I would have had a teacher who I went to every week to kind of take lessons. And
mhm.
for basketball, it will be each year would be a different season, so therefore a different coach and a different squad. What was learning dancing like? Did you have a private teacher? Was there classes? Was it the same group of people? In those 6 years, basically, I want to know how your environment kind of shaped you.
Sure, yeah. Well, I started doing Ballroom and Latin because, well, it was a double whammy. I really loved watching Strictly Come Dancing with my parents, and a local dance school started doing Ballroom and Latin classes in my like sessions in my school, in my primary school. And so I went along, and for the first little while, couple of years, I was just going to the lessons after school. And then I joined the kind of dance sport squad of the dance school. And so I was going to more lessons each week. I honestly can't remember what the exact scheduling was, because it's like a while ago now. But usually we'd have, I remember it was definitely Friday evenings was the dance sport squad lessons. And so you'd have a mixture of kind of more private lesson style where you'd be, if you had a partner, you would be with them. And there'd be maybe two or three different couples that would be dancing, and you'd be working on the technique and stuff like that.
Mm.
You'd have larger group lessons, and then you'd have kind of competitions as well. So it was really varied, and such a kind of fever dream experience to look back on now. I think that's compounded by the fact that it's a fair while ago, um, but it was a really fun thing to do. And yeah, I have such fond memories, particularly
Mm.
getting to dance in the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, which was really incredible, and such an insight into the world of competitive dance. Yeah, I was still at the point where I was in the lower age ranges, so it was definitely not as intense as it becomes when you get older and you're able to compete in the like teen and adult categories.
Mm.
So I am glad that I had that time, but I'm also glad that I left it when I did. I
Mm.
mean, putting it into perspective, one of the reasons why I stopped doing it competitively and just went back to having weekly lessons more just for fun was because I wanted to focus on my schoolwork.
Mm.
And that was when I was what, 10, 11. So yeah, I really don't know quite how my friends that do dance sport while at uni manage it. I admire them for that. But it was a great experience.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure you've got plenty of photos and videos and friendships that you can always kind of lean on from those times. How did you like transition from the intensity of competitive dancing to being a library assistant, which I just feel like they are completely different intensity, and but it seems like both have been very important parts of your upbringing.
Absolutely, and they definitely are very different, but also kind of one filled the space of the other. One of the reasons why dance became a less regular part of my life was because I spent my Saturdays, so most weekends, working at the library instead.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I've always loved books and reading, and that has always been a big part of my life. And I knew and was quite close with the librarians that worked at my local library, particularly because I was involved in a reading group there for young kids. And as time went on, I then volunteered for the library. They have this big scheme nationally called the Summer Reading Challenge, which is every single summer holiday, kids sign up, and for each of the books they read, they get a little reward. And it's a great way to kind of involve kids in reading that otherwise might not. It's something that's very interactive. It also lets them have that activity to do with their parents, their grandparents, their family members, their siblings.
mm,
And so I volunteered for that in the summer of 2017,
mm.
um, I think. Yeah, the summer of 2017. And I really loved it. You know, it was volunteering work, and you were mostly on the end of greeting the kids and the families as they came into the library. You'd given them a little stamp on their stamp card for the books that they'd read, and give them their stickers or their medals or whatever reward that they were due for the books they'd read. And I really enjoyed just talking with them about what books they were reading. And also, on the other hand, I kind of went the extra mile bit because I loved being in the library and I
Mm.
was just very curious. So I would be asking the librarians about what their job entailed, and I would be helping them out with shelving books and tidying the library and really getting to know how it worked in a more kind of behind the scenes level. And clearly that must have impressed them because they then told me that there was a Saturday job going, and I applied for it. So yeah, and after a little while filling in the form and an interview, I started my Saturday job, and I did that up until leaving sixth form and heading off to uni with a little bit of a strange hiatus for COVID. Um, but yeah, it's been a really big part of my life and still is because I get to go back and work there on a kind of 0 hours casual contract every holiday, which is really nice, especially because there's a few of us that do that and come back from university and work there. It's such a lovely camaraderie.
Mm. I'm not surprised that you impress them, and I also understand the joy of talking to children. Like for me, kind of through mentoring, through basketball coaching, through community service, it's very fulfilling and rewarding. But why for you was it enjoyable talking to those children?
Yeah, I mean, it's reaching out to the next generation, right? And when I first started, I was part of that kind of cohort a bit more. I was still a kid myself. And I just wanted to share my enjoyment of reading and of the library as a community space.
Why
And
is that enjoyable? Like deep down, why does that motivate you? Why are you devoting your time to that?
I guess it is perhaps just passing that on, especially because at school and also then in my experiences at the library, you meet these kids that haven't seen that enjoyment of reading, for example, or haven't been encouraged to express themselves creatively,
Mm,
and trying to kind of light that spark within them, and really just being a friendly face and saying, oh, so what did you read, or if they'd finished their 6 books on a stamp card and were ready to collect their bookmark or medal or whatever it was, you're actually taking the time to treat them with respect and be like, well, which was the book that you liked the most? Because often that's not something that is really afforded to young kids, is that kind of enthusiasm and curiosity about what they're doing. It's usually seen as a very one-way street, that they look at the world with curiosity and the world just kind of carries on regardless. So yeah, I guess that's definitely one thing that's made my time at the library really enjoyable. But also as well, on the professional side of it, I think it's like a two-way street. It's taught me so much about the working world and how to get along successfully in a teamwork kind of dynamic, how to work with members of the public. Our main branch in the town, often we'll have to be supporting people that are perhaps unhoused and just need somewhere to come in to print off forms that they might need to get support, or just for somewhere warm in the winter. And so really learning to kind of interact and support people from all walks of life has been such an important thing and really rewarding. I had one customer who he'd recently got himself into temporary housing, and it was such a big milestone for him. And it meant that he was able to get a library card, because you need to have a fixed address in order to sign up for one. And he was so ecstatic to be able to take up books, and just seeing that same enjoyment of reading that I have in someone else, and having been able to help in even some small way, was really wonderful.
That's wonderful, and just being able to make those connections. And I really liked you say about, asking the kids about what they have enjoyed reading. And, we all enjoy other people taking an active interest in our lives. And I know for some of those kids, they would be quite encouraged by an older person taking an interest, and it makes them to think as well. And that would certainly hopefully encourage a lot of them to continue their reading journey. Was there anyone in your life at that point when you were maybe younger who you felt like just took in really active interest in you and just nurtured and mentored you and just really inspired you to push a little bit harder?
Oh, 100%. It's hard to even narrow down in terms of reading. I mean, my parents, obviously first point of contact, but also my uncle, who is not my uncle by blood, but just by friendship and family ties. He really fostered my love for reading. Every birthday or Christmas, my present would be some sort of book. And he, again, it's that sort of thing. He would, really take an interest in what I was reading and learning about, and kind of fostering that enthusiasm in kind of tangible ways, and reflecting and meeting that enthusiasm, I think, is so important. I had teachers at school that were also, really enthusiastic. One of my reception teachers, who, sadly passed away, but she had been really enthusiastic and shared my love about Formula One. And I remember talking to her about Lewis Hamilton, and sharing the book about him. I think it was his autobiography that he put out after winning his first world championship. I remember kind of sharing that with her. And definitely a lot of teachers throughout my time in primary school, all the way through to sixth form, and even now at uni, have been really important figures in my life, in terms of being role models and sharing that kind of enthusiasm and openness.
Do you feel like there's obviously all those mentors and role models all have their own different personalities and have shaped you in different ways, but do you feel like the common quality, trait, or characteristic that they all seem to possess?
Well, I guess humility perhaps is an important one, because for especially when I was younger, I was a very driven and involved student, and I was really interested in that side of things, but I also just was interested in people and communicating with people, learning about them. And so I always had a very, close working relationship with my teachers in that way, in terms of, I treated them as people, and, it was respectful, obviously, but it was less of a, I don't know, for example, when we went into sixth form, everyone used to say, oh yeah, it's so weird, the teachers kind of treat us like we're equals now. And I found that so strange, because my teachers had always sort of treated me as an equal, because I'd treated them in that way and had that respect. But obviously, that just requires some humility on their part to not, I don't know, to just kind of go into that with openness, and to be, welcoming and supportive of this little Sophie that wanted to learn and find out new things. And yeah, I think that was definitely a shared trait between all of them, a quality of just openness and humility.
Very interesting. And you obviously, even at uni and at school, you've been very involved and driven, in your own words. Why?
That's the eternal question, and that's really hard to answer. I don't even know whether I've really even reflected on it myself. Um, at the center of it, I guess, is a curiosity and wanting to understand and learn about other people, other stories, about history, about culture, about how and why things are the way they are now, and how and why we could change them. And I guess that was what was kind of nurtured in me from, teachers and family members and friends when I was younger, and developed into, the areas of interest academically that I have now.
Mm,
Um, but I guess as well, on the other hand, it's also something that has never really needed a big why.
mm,
I haven't found that I needed to have a reason, a kind of driving force behind getting up and going to school and putting in 110%,
mm,
or at uni, you know, the way of working and the way of approaching things at uni is definitely very different to how it was at school. I have a much more balanced social life dash working life now, and I think part of that is just being an adult.
mm,
But I, yeah, I sometimes feel like the best days of uni, for example, are the ones where I'm not necessarily even thinking about, oh, why am I doing this? I'm
mm,
just enjoying it for what it is, and being really grateful in the moment of like, wow, I get to study what I am really passionate about
mm.
in a brilliant institution, and isn't that great, without necessarily having to project it further as to like, where will it take me, or to project it backwards as to like, why am I wanting to do this? It's just, I like this and it's great, isn't that cool?
So it's mostly just intrinsic motivation rather than trying to prove anything or trying to solve a particular issue in the world or trying to reach a particular goal, would you say?
I think so, yeah. I think there's obviously a lot of extrinsic factors that do come into play, but I definitely think of them as more secondary.
Mm,
Um, I love to think about where the skills that I'm developing might take me, but
mm,
also I don't let that be the reason why I'm developing them. I just want to learn and embrace that, and embrace that opportunity.
mm,
And I definitely think that comes from just never being under that sort of pressure when I was younger to
mm,
achieve things for a certain reason. I think a lot of the messaging for kids is, you need to get, at least in the UK school system, you need to get your good GCSEs so that you can go and get good A levels, so that you can go to a good university, and then after that you'll get a good job. And it's a very kind of linear process. And I mean, for a lot of people, that is what happens and what works. And so far, that is what I have done, as well. But I wasn't wanting to get good A-levels or good GCSEs because of those next steps. It was because I wanted to just do the best I could at that point and that stage of what I was working on. I guess that's perhaps a distinguishing factor, is I want to acknowledge the experience I'm having and the thing that I'm choosing to do, and really just put in the best work that I can to that. And then from my experience so far anyway, things kind of fall into place if you've put that work in. I think one of the sayings that I really like is about, good luck isn't really good luck, it's hard work and putting yourself into the right position, the right place at the right time. So yeah.
That's wonderful, and I really agree with that advice of sometimes if you just do the best in whatever you're currently doing, things will fall into place. And I'm sure that when you were in school, you couldn't have possibly anticipated some of the experiences and opportunities and doors that have opened up for you now. But when you look back in retrospect, you can see the connection of those earlier hard work, the discipline, the skills, the empathy, the kind of all the skills that you've acquired have come together to give you this opportunity. And that's what I kind of tell a lot of the kids who are quite worried about their 5-year, 10-year plan. And I'm just like, well, it's hard to know. Like, none of us know what's going to happen. We didn't know COVID happened, and a completely different way of working. But if you just do the best in whatever you're currently doing, doors will open up and opportunities will come. With all those commitments and with all those arduous commitments, have there been moments of downsides like burnout, stress, disappointment perhaps, of not meeting your own high expectations?
Oof, that's a good question. And yeah, I guess on the one hand, there's certainly been times where I've been burnt out. Less so definitely at university. And I think that's something that has been really special to me about being at Cambridge, and the kind of journey that I've gone through, is that my work-life balance is a balance. And I think part of that comes from some of the weird ways that Cambridge works, and that I've kind of adapted to, in terms of the way that your schedule will fall and the week starting on Thursday, for mysterious reasons, weirdly have kind of allowed me to embrace work in a different way, and treating academic work as something that is constantly in progress, and as a to-do list that will never be finished. There will always be more that I could do, and being very rational about deciding when is the point that I stop and I take the time for myself, and I do the self-care, and I see my friends, and I have time away from the work. And yeah, I think having that, where I have a little bit of work every day pretty much during term time, and that is sandwiched with fun activities and societies and friends, rather than kind of having to really regiment myself of, well, I must do 6 hours of this today so that I can spend tomorrow off with my friends. That just doesn't really work for me. And I think that the kind of structure of university has revealed that, because obviously at school you do have that very regimented timetable of, well, I have this amount of hours of classes and afterwards I will see my friends. Whereas now it's much more, well, actually, I can see my friends when I'm studying, because we'll go to a coffee shop and work together. And then that's really great, because our breaks are built in friendship time, because you'll want to be catching up about other things going on in your lives. And then, for example, a big part of my friendship group at college is eating meals together. We all got to know each other because we ate dinners together in Upper Hall for Christ's canteen. And that is where our kind of friendship group began, because in COVID times, it was one of the few ways that we had to actually meet other people in college. So finding those kind of opportunities to make the learning part fun and then make the friendship and fun parts also productive, for want of a better word, has been really nice. And having that constant mixture of things, it means that the academic work doesn't feel like work, it feels like fun too.
Do you feel like your definition of friendship have evolved throughout the years?
100%. I'm so lucky now to have some really, really wonderful friends. And I think I've got a great mixture of friends that have been there from the start, really, that I've known since we were 3 or 4 years old, and we're still really close. And they're perhaps friends that you don't speak to as often, but every time you do, it's as if you only saw each other the previous day, and you're just picking up where you left off. And I've got other friends that I see when I'm at uni all the time, or that I live with at uni, that provide that support in a different way. Um, I'd say in terms of defining it, it would be the people that I want to share everything with, the good and the bad, and the people that I don't have any qualms about talking to about those things. You know, people that I know that I can go to with challenges, but also that I can go to with my achievements, and they won't be jealous or uh, seeking to kind of distract from that. They'll be wanting to celebrate that, and then vice versa. People that know that they can come to me and I will support them if they need it, but also I will shout from the rooftops of the things that they've done. And that, I think, is something that I guess develops with time and with, you know, becoming an adult, maturing, learning about yourself, because you really can't find that level of friendship with people until you know in yourself what sort of things that you need support about, and the the qualities that you're looking for in those people.
What have been some of your big achievements that you have shared with your friends recently?
Oh, okay. Recently, I guess starting the year abroad's been a big one. So I've got my best friend Marina, who is from the US. I FaceTime her very regularly. We've spent most of our friendship, we've been friends for 12 years plus now. Most of that has been on FaceTime calls.
Mm.
And so we often catch up. And yes, it was really nice the other week to just call and show her where I'm living and what I'm doing and talk about that. And the kind of nice feedback that I've got so far from my year abroad internship. Probably also as well, um, some of the stuff I've been doing to do with motorsports, and um, for example, going to Formula E and getting media accreditation this summer was something that was a really pleasant surprise and very fun, because I absolutely love going to these things anyway. And it was only last year, 2021, that I got the chance to go to a motorsports event for the first time. And the two that I have been to have been with media accreditation that I worked really hard to get. And so that's been quite cool to share with friends. And they're all very excited, even if they don't follow motorsports like I do. They're all super happy for me. So that's really cool.
That's wonderful. And conversely, what are some of the big achievements some of your friends have had recently?
Oh, wow. They're all doing such amazing things that it's hard to pick out the highlights, because they're all excellent beings. Um, Romany is doing some amazing stuff as an intern in the kind of admissions office at Christ's, and just doing excellently with that, working on the outreach to prospective students. Marina is working in a lab while she's studying, and she's doing some amazing things with her research. She does psychology, so it's totally different to what I am involved in, but incredible. So is Olivia, another psychologist friend. She's in Cambridge and has been an Amgen scholar this summer. So absolutely awesome stuff from her too. Just yeah, so many. That's just some of the first highlights that I can think of. I mean, other friends that have been doing such exciting stuff. Akash, who is the current president of the Motorsport Fan Society, he's just finished an internship with McLaren, which has been incredible. to kind of follow along and watch. He's been working in a sim team. He's met Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo and worked with them, and that's been incredible. And just yeah, so many friends are doing such exciting things, whether it's in the academic or professional spheres or in their personal lives, just overcoming personal challenges, which obviously I wouldn't mention here, but that I think reserve and warrant the same amount of celebration and respect as professional milestones as well. So yeah.
That's beautiful, and I think it's always lovely to share other people's achievements, and if you can be happy about other people's success, it's just a good way to live, in my opinion. I also resonate with what you said earlier about, friends are some of the people who perhaps you don't need to speak to all the time, and perhaps I've had to adopt this mindset given that I've moved so far away from Australia to the UK that I practically just cannot spend time with them in the way I previously could have. And it's particularly lovely for me this time going back to basically be able to meet them and just continue where we left off and still have that trust in each other, which is very beautiful. And you also mentioned about friends who you want to share everything with. And that is very idealistic because obviously you can never share everything with everyone. I think that's also beautiful because each time you see, that's why you have things to catch up on and to be curious. And obviously that's a value that you clearly take pride in. So I was wondering,
100%.
you've acknowledged some of your achievements, you've acknowledged your friends. Maybe now's a good time for you to share something that most of your friends perhaps don't know about you, because I'm sure they'll be listening to this podcast.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay. This is actually quite difficult because I feel like I do talk about anything and everything.
I did say I'll challenge you on the podcast.
I guess perhaps, and it goes back to the kind of mental well-being, mindfulness stuff that we've talked about outside of this podcast. It is just kind of as well being on my year abroad is how much I miss them. And I hope that I communicate this to them, that I think sometimes it's quite difficult to do that without seeming very soppy and cheesy and seeming like you're going a bit over the top. But being here in France now for a month, I really miss my friends and just the amount of times during a day where I will think of friends when I'm just doing something really mundane, or there's a particular snack that's been left in the staff fridge for us to plunder, and I think, oh, so and so would love to have that, or stuff that's very mundane and will just make me think of a friend. And yeah, so I guess that's probably something that maybe don't know or do, but here's another reminder, is that I miss them very much. And also that I'm proud of them all, because I think you can never say that enough.
That's a great answer. I think that's like an attitude or a thought that they perhaps don't know. Do you also have a concrete example or perhaps an experience maybe in your childhood or elsewhere that have really shaped you into the person you are, but you perhaps haven't really talked about much, that hasn't had an opportunity to come up at those dinner conversations?
Mm. I mean, I guess as well with friendship, it's perhaps just that, the fact that it's taken me a long time to find this level of friendship, and that what I have with my friends is something really special, because I've got a handful of friends that are some of my closest that have been there throughout my childhood. But then a lot of the friends that I did have at school, for example, I'm not really in touch with anymore, or we grew apart, or they're just off doing different things, and so am I. And I think perhaps part of that is realizing that those friendships weren't necessarily the same. It's hard to kind of quantify or to qualify exactly the distinctions between them. But some of those people weren't necessarily in my life in the same way, or weren't intended to be in my life for the same sort of depth and the same sort of reasons as my friends that I have now. So I guess, yeah, really thinking about maybe friends that I've lost that, just aren't in touch anymore and are off doing their own things. And sometimes it feels quite bittersweet, but also just being kind of, yeah, humble and having that humility to not get so invested in like the egotistical side of it, and think, well, actually, this isn't a reflection on me. It's just a reflection on life that we're not friends anymore, because there's still that respect, but it's just somebody that is off doing their own thing. And luckily, that I've not got too many people where that has happened. That you've just kind of drifted apart and don't really have anything to do with each other anymore, not for any malintent or from any drama, but just because that's how life has happened. But I think looking at those situations, it does make me even more grateful for the friends that I have at the moment, because, yeah, it's just such a close friendship and close bond that I share with them that I really treasure.
It's true that sometimes life, you kind of go off in different directions, and it's unpractical to be able to keep up with every single person throughout your childhood that you
Yeah.
deeply respect, and I'm sure one day you will meet these people again, and to be able to share lots of memories and to see each other's progress, which it often happens in quite unexpected ways. And I'm sure we've all got anecdotes of someone who we used to know. I just want you to
Definitely.
I just want you to think of someone who perhaps was quite close to you, maybe, 12, 13, early teenage years, spent a lot of time together, shared a lot, knew each other quite well, and perhaps you haven't really been in contact with, and it's, nothing bad happened. It's just that life kind of got in the way.
Hmm.
If you saw them now, how would they, from your perspective, describe the transformation you've had? So say you get to spend a weekend with them now. So they get to
Hmm.
know your current hobbies, your passions, your personality, and they obviously knew who you were at that time, and you also know who you were at that time. How would they, yeah, describe your transformation?
Oh my goodness, that's such a brilliant question, because I think I've definitely changed a lot, but I think at the core I'm still the same. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense.
It does make sense. I'm saying, but go on.
I guess I think the way that I approach the world and the way I try and, appreciate the things that I have as I have them, and not try and project any more expectations onto the present moment than that. And the way that I try and really make the most of the opportunities that I've come across and treasure the people that are around me. I think that is the same. But definitely my my confidence, my self-expression, the things that I get involved in, the friends and the community that I've found at uni, for example, are very different. Um, they, I think it's more expansive, I guess. I've really poured into so many different areas that interest me, and I have made friends in each one of those, and I've really thrown myself into the unexpected areas, that the things that I didn't necessarily quite think would go anywhere, and then they have, because I've just put that passion in, and I feel like that's quite evident just in the way that I approach my day to day. So I suppose that would be something quite noticeable. Um, yeah.
That's awesome. I from our interactions, I feel like you also value kindness quite a bit. You're very thoughtful. You clearly care a lot about other people. And back to another Janelle Monáe quote is you are only as beautiful as the many beautiful things you do for others without expectations. And I was wondering, building on that, what's the best act of kindness that you've ever given or received?
Wow, I love that quote very much. And acts of kindness is such a big thing as well. I always used to love that, even when I was younger and first kind of encountered the idea. But I think it's, as well, it's beyond even the idea of doing that as an act of kindness and making it this big deal. It's just approaching every interaction in life with that. Um, wow, I guess one of the really amazing acts of kindness that was given to me, I guess, was to do with motorsport. I'd written an article for Varsity about extremee, this new racing series that I was very interested in, and the sports editor was pleased with what I'd written, and got published, and that was great. And then, in perhaps one of the most important acts of kindness I've ever received, I didn't mention it. I was just pottering along with term time stuff. And he got in touch with me and said, look, we've been thinking of following on from your article with an interview with one of the lead scientists from the extremely science team, who just so happens to be connected to Cambridge, Professor Peter Wadhams. Would you like to do the interview?
Of course.
And he didn't have to. Yeah, it was a resounding yes, and he didn't have to ask me that. As the editor of the section, that was really his jurisdiction to do it himself, or to pick anyone. And because he knew how enthusiastic I was about it, he gave me that kind of opportunity. And from there, that has led to so many positive, fantastic things, both with Varsity, but also with Extremely themselves, and having excerpts from that article published on their social media for Earth Day, and getting to attend an Extremely race last year, and loads of other cool things for the motorsport sock, and all kind of tied in together. That a lot of it came from that kind of act of kindness of somebody
Mm.
thinking about me when they saw that opportunity. And I'd like to think that I've hopefully done that for other people as well. Is I guess at its core, it is that thoughtfulness. It's seeing something and thinking that that would be perfect for someone else, and then passing on and sharing the love, I guess.
I have no doubt that you've also made many other people feel the same way as you had felt in that moment. So, what kind of impact do you strive to have on the people around you and perhaps eventually on your community?
I definitely think kindness is at the center, um, and just bringing positivity and respect. I also just want to try and leave things in a better way than I found them. You come to uni and you want to help perhaps change perspectives, or to help broaden access for the people that are coming up behind you. I think that's been definitely a big thing for me. I'm a first generation student, so neither of my parents went to uni, and coming in, it was incredibly exciting, but also very, very different, because I didn't necessarily have that family background of knowing how to navigate these sort of institutions. And hopefully, being open about that, and just generally open about my experiences, can help people to have the kind of confidence to go out and put themselves out there, and to maybe follow those paths. So yeah, I'd like to hope that I can just showing myself being happy and enjoying life, and taking the positives all the time. And obviously that doesn't mean that everything is positive. There are hard times, and there are some things that are also just completely out of your control, and all you can do is have to try and face it in whatever way is possible. But you can try and shape how you approach it.
Are you a confident person?
I think so. And I think that's grown as I've got older, and just grown to know more about myself, be more introspective, self-reflective about what I do, my identity, where I stand in the world. But I definitely think I've always been outgoing. I've always enjoyed just talking to people, and maybe some of that is from like being an only child. I don't know, because I was always, talking with my parents at dinner, but then if they had friends over, their friends from, years and years from work or from whatever, I would also just still be at the table and I would still be talking with these people. Or, in school, I, as long as I can remember, always had friends who were both younger and older than me in school. I didn't really care about the year group divides that other people seem to think were important. And, I think getting involved in house activities or extracurriculars where I was working on a dance routine with people that were almost ready to finish school and people that had only just started. And I just made some wonderful friends, and I wasn't really thinking about like, oh, these, we're not in the same year group, or their experiences are different than mine. It's just this kind of openness to reaching out to people.
Feel free to not answer this, but you mentioned your first gen and not really knowing perhaps how to navigate an institution like Cambridge. What did your parents do, and how present were they in your childhood? Like, what was home life like in those early years?
Honestly, my parents are wonderful. I don't know if there's dogs barking in the background of this audio. Yeah, my parents have just been such an important part in my life and only ever offered love and support. I'm really lucky that despite being a first-gen student, I also have had a very privileged upbringing, and I think perhaps that speaks to the nuances of access and outreach. On the one hand, I am a first-gen student, but on the other hand, I did go to a private school. So then it does make it a little bit more complex when talking about these things, because I obviously don't want to take away from the experiences of people who have had a much harder childhood, for example. But I think for me, the way that being a first-gen student perhaps shaped how I came into Cambridge was more in terms of just the knowledge and the understanding of what to expect. Because compared, say, to friends that I have here, that their parents went to university, full stop. But actually, I've got friends at my college whose parents also went to my college, and so came in knowing exactly what to expect, or at least, had an idea. And for a lot of it, it was kind of the unknown. I was lucky that my parents did loads of research. I did lots of research, and I had a school that had the resources and the kind of willingness to also support me through the application process of kind of figuring out which college do I want to apply to and how to approach it. But definitely it was more of a kind of fumbling around until we struck gold and really just figuring it out as we went along.
Where do you see your life heading? Because you're accumulating all of these great cultural knowledge from your year abroad, from your language studies, very practical skills by doing your writing, your creativity, the fashion. You're now doing a podcast episode as well, bringing in your communication skills. Where do you hope to combine all these talents of yours and simultaneously, I guess, find fulfillment?
I guess, yeah, I've got fingers in many pies, and I really like that. I think I feel most fulfilled when I'm just pursuing things that intrigue me without expectation. And maybe they will go somewhere and maybe they won't, but I'm enjoying it, and that's the most important thing. And I definitely think that going into those things with no expectations is what has so far yielded the best results. For example, working at the library, I had been involved in the kind of community aspect of it and the book club and stuff like that for a long time. And I volunteered there for the summer without expectation. I just wanted to do it. I'd been waiting until I was old enough for the age range of volunteers for the summer reading challenge in order to do it, because I just wanted to get involved. And then the fact that then helped me and set me up to get the Saturday job was a totally unexpected bonus and came really out of the blue. Or with extremee and the motorsports in general, the motorsport sock, everything I've been doing with that all kind of came from just being enthusiastic and then things sort of falling into place, following on from that. So I guess I don't really know where I'm going to be. And I like it that way. I definitely have a much more clear idea now of the sort of roles or responsibilities or challenges I want to take on as I move into the year abroad and finishing my degree, and then looking into going into the working world. I really am interested in just communicating with people, and how do you kind of spread messages of positivity and also have a positive impact through the work you're doing. And I definitely think that's one of the reasons why I'm so much enjoying the motorsport stuff, especially on the side of extremee and Formula E and these other racing for purpose series that are spreading such important messages about the environment and climate change, electrification. When you look at extremee, it's also doing great work in terms of gender equality, because they've got 50-50 male and female drivers, and those messages and the way that those series incorporate that into something that I love, motorsport, is really exciting to me. So definitely an area that I think I'd like to go into, but I'm also open to really anything, because I just want to follow what I find fun and interesting. And I know that potentially in a year and a half's time, when I'm starting to look for post-graduation opportunities, what I find interesting could be completely different. I love music, I love fashion, like you said, dance. Who knows whether something in those sort of creative industries could come through, or I could go into following on for some of the other professional experience I have and working in a more corporate environment. I would just, I'm kind of excited, but also just willing to, in a way, go with the flow a little bit, work hard on what I have right in front of me, and put myself out there, put my hat in the ring for as many things as I can, but then not be too worried about what direction it goes, and see where things take me.
I'm sure good things, great things actually, not just good things, will be on your way that you cannot even comprehend what's out there at the moment. And
thank you.
It's really
I
exciting.
think that's it. It's the things that come up that you didn't even know were a possibility that are the most exciting. And that's happened with my degree. I'm primarily a medievalist now. And as somebody that has always been passionate about modern history, and I still am, and I still study that as part of my degree, I knew when I was going to come to Cambridge that is what I wanted to focus on, and there were papers from the history tripos that I wanted to borrow. And now I'm probably not going to, because I've discovered that medieval literature and culture is something I'm really passionate about, and that has ended up actually being the majority of my course, for example, my course load in second year. And then looking towards things like my dissertation in final year, which is a little bit far in the future because I've got a dissertation to do during my year abroad to start off with. But looking forward to that final year dissertation, I think I'm most likely to do something that tries to bridge those two areas and tie together the medieval heritage with some of the modern adaptations and receptions of those medieval texts. It's a very working theory because I've not even started the first of the two dissertations yet. But I think it shows that, you can end up finding these really unexpected areas. I knew nothing about medieval literature before I got here. And I didn't even really think about the fact that I would be studying it, despite my degree being modern and medieval languages. And now it's such a big part of not just my academic work, but my general interests in life in just a learning for fun way. So yeah, I think embracing the unexpected is a really big part of what I look to for the future. And ideally in 5 or 10 years time, I'll be doing a job that I don't even know is a thing right now.
Absolutely. So one of the purposes of the podcast is to give you a legacy-worthy interview. And before I give my final one or two questions, is there anything else that you might want included in this recording for you to look back on in 10, 20 years' time and go, this is a good snapshot of who Sophie is at this particular point in time?
Wow, that's a really great point, and it's really exciting as well that this is something that can be a little time capsule of who I am and what I'm doing right now. I guess just a message of embracing adventure, like what you said at the start, is a big deal for me. And I think it always has and always will be, is just being open to the unknown and to new things, and believing in yourself enough to step out of your comfort zone when it's a safe and supported environment to do so, of course, but knowing that you have that trust in yourself to put yourself out there and to do things that are different and exciting. And I'd like to hope that whatever future me is doing, that I will have followed that ethos.
Wonderful. Now, I've also had to change my final question because you kind of answered some of that in there. But second to last question, how would you describe your fashion style?
Woohoo! I love fashion. I think my style has definitely changed a lot, and I think part of that just comes with growing up and being more confident in expressing myself and not feeling like you have to follow trends or dress a certain way for certain reasons. Since I was a kid, the neighbour who lived opposite me, Mrs. Barley, she was in her 90s, and every weekend I would go over to her house and we would have tea and biscuits and we would read Vogue, because she got the Vogue magazine every month. And we would talk about what we saw in a Vogue magazine, and I just loved it. And I think having that sort of openness to just explore. And now that I think about it, there's a lot of things in the way that she dressed and styled herself and approached fashion that I kind of lean into as well. I love color. I love matching and coordinating colors, and I love picking combinations that sometimes perhaps look a little bit crazy but seem to work. And I love finding pieces that I can wear, that are versatile and try to reduce my impact in terms of consumption. That's definitely something that I've learned more about in recent years, and I definitely try and not consume as much as possible. I have a lot of hand-me-downs from my mum, which I think she's probably not as pleased about as I am, because she wants to wear them as well. But things like that, which reduce your impact and approaching fashion in a more sustainable way. But I definitely think at the moment I'm in a really happy place with like how I dress. I dress for myself and that's it, not for anyone else. And I dress comfy, I dress smart sometimes, and I love to get all dressed up in a nice dress sometimes, and other times I'll be wearing my dungarees and my comfiest trainers and living my best life either way.
I'm going to add one more question, and that question I'm going to add is, what would be the title of your biography or autobiography at this stage?
Wow, oh my gosh. I feel like you've rightfully put me on the spot here. And
as I promised.
for somebody that's supposedly creative, I really don't know. I think I'd want it to point to the things that interest me, and also the way, the attitudes that I try and handle life with. So maybe something like life on the open road, or something like that. Gotta bring in the cars somehow.
Awesome. Final question. Typically, as you would know, having listened to so many episodes, would be like, what's one message, quote, or saying you wish every educator would promote and every kid would internalize? I feel like you've really addressed that with your attitudes and your reflections. So my final question to you is, given all your diverse interests, style, fashion, hobbies, whatever you categorize it, I'm sure there are aspects of you that don't always get a chance to be expressed or perhaps understood by most people. So
Mm-hmm.
what is a question that you wish more people would ask you about, or would help you to, would help them to understand you better as a holistic person, if that makes sense?
Oh, wow, that's really deep, and I like that a lot, because I think it's true that often, especially when you make friends within particular contexts, a lot of the time your friendship is shaped by that, and not in a negative way. But for example, friends that I've made through the Motorsport Fans Society, funnily enough, a lot of our time and conversations are talking about motorsports. That's just an example, and it's definitely not a bad thing. It's something I love very much. Having those shared passions. I guess a question that I think everyone probably ought to ask themselves more often, and also ask others, is like, how do you feel? How do you feel in yourself? Like the person that you're embodying, and the actions that you do every day that build up to be who you are. Like, does that sit right with you? Does that resonate with you? Would you change it? How do you think you got there? How do you think the decisions you've made have shaped that? And I definitely think that where I am now is in a place where I'm very happy with those cumulative decisions and choices, and the way that I inhabit my body and my life, and the approaches that I have to different challenges. And I think that stems from the decisions you've made, like I said, but also the people you surround yourself with, and then the mindset that you bring to things. So I guess, yeah, how do you really feel within yourself is a question I think we could all do with answering.
Fantastic, Sophie. Very eloquently put, and yeah, it is a wonderful question that I never actually thought about that, and I guess most people don't intuitively ask that when they first meet someone, but perhaps we all could at least consider it as we approach our future interactions. But I just want to thank you as well. I know we haven't interacted that much in the grand scheme of things, but every now and then the messages that you send me, the words of support and encouragement for my podcast and for what I was doing for the union campaign when I was quite nervous and stressed, for when I see you in the UL, you just always do radiate a sense of positivity. And I also greatly admire just the level of detail you put into each message. I know you have so much on your plate, but each time we communicate, you're thoughtful, and yeah, I can just feel that you care about other people. And I think that's such a great trait that if you continue, new opportunities will come up. And I guess this podcast is a testament to that, where the fact that you took so much time to answer to my initial messages led to this. Yeah, I just think you have such a bright future ahead of you. And I look forward to observing from afar and perhaps listening back to this recording in years' time and see you achieving some of your wildest dreams and many more that you won't even be able to anticipate.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the podcast.